And then fourth, they were devoted to the prayers. And it's interesting, most translations simply say to prayer, but the ESV is right here. It has that definite article, the prayers. And this is because they were meeting at fixed time in the temple courts for prayer. We see this at the start of the very next chapter, Acts 3:1. Now Peter and John were going up to the temple at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour. And there are multiple references in Acts to the fact that the church in Jerusalem, they met in a particular place, in Solomon's portico, the long covered colonnade on the east side of the temple courts. Remember also how Jesus, he had driven out from here the money changers. As he drove them out, he quoted Isaiah 56:7. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations. And so Jesus had even prepared this place for his church to meet, to devote themselves to all that they were doing, to the preaching, to the teaching, to celebrating the Lord's Supper, to the fellowship that they were sharing, and to pouring out their hearts in prayer. How were they praying? They were almost certainly following the practice that was customary for Jews and now for believers of their day. That is, that they were using fixed prayers, while also at times praying extemporaneous, spontaneous prayers from the heart. And here I want to say a little bit about fixed prayers. This makes sense because we have two major examples of fixed prayers in the scripture. First, of course, you have the Lord's Prayer. He has taught his disciples how to pray. And then we also have the example of the Psalms. We have a whole prayer book in the Bible of how we can pray, how we can pour out our hearts to the Lord. Now, beyond praying Scripture itself back to the Lord, I would also encourage you to take advantage. There's been a recent revival in publishing of publishing books, prayer books, that we can use. Now, of course, you're familiar with the Valley of Vision. I used it this morning for our confession of sin. But recently, several more excellent resources have been published. I won't say their names now, but I may send them in the prayer email on Monday, because there are many excellent resources. And of course, there are many downsides of using fixed prayers. You can imagine, perhaps you know, those who mouth prayers without meaning them. Perhaps you know a Roman Catholic who repeats 100 Hail Marys over and over to the point that it's nothing more than a mantra. And this is the very thing that Jesus said not to do. He said in Matthew 6:7, when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Of course, don't heap up empty phrases. Don't simply pray words without meaning them. And yet, I have found that my prayers can be greatly stimulated by reading the prayers of Scripture, of course, but also by reading and benefiting from the prayers of our forefathers in the faith, and then using these as a launch pad for my own prayers. Start, of course, with the Lord's Prayer. Start with the Psalms, but then you can take advantage of the prayers of others, other prayer resources. Now, the point of it all is rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Romans 12:12. Devote yourself to prayer.